AD's new strategy is all about achieving disability justice. So before we start, we would like to ask you, a few questions, not for you to answer now, but I just also want you to have this at the back of your mind. What does disability justice truly mean to you, to your community, and to your organization? What does it mean? Because these are some of the things that maybe you'll take them back home and you'll be able to discuss and sort of just pick the brains of those people you work with, those ones who are around you. In the meantime, let me tell you what to expect during this event. So today we are going to hear from the CEOs of AD International about Mtiririko. Mtiririko actually is a Swahili word and it means flow, flow. So today is about flowing. How do we flow? How is this strategy really going to let us flow as activists? AD chose this name, the name of the strategy being Mtiririko, because their vision is to see resources flow to disability justice movements. And how amazing is that? You'll also hear from disability justice activists and one of our founders who will have a conversation about some of the themes and issues that are central to AD's new strategy. I would like to remind you just that this event has captioning and international sign language interpretation. This event is taking place in English, but we will be having different launches in other languages over the coming weeks. This event is also being recorded, and I'm hoping that maybe those ones who want to listen back will be able to do that. But just before I hand over to our great leaders, the two CEOs, let me just remind you of these two things again. How do you truly shift power and resources to disability justice activists? And what does disability justice mean to you and the community that you are working with, or you as an activist? And now I want to welcome Mary Ann and Fred Ouko. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, for graciously inviting us into this event. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who has managed to join us today. My name is Fredrick Ouko, and I'm the co-CTO of AD International. I would like my colleague to also introduce herself.
Hi everyone, yes, I'm Mary Ann Clements. I'm the other half of the co-leadership, co-CEO team here at AD. I'm a white woman with brown hair with a bit of grey in it and some dark, well, not dark glasses, but navy rimmed glasses on. I have today a purple top and a purple and grey jacket on, and I'm in a yellow room with a lot of untidy books behind me. Yeah, I'm going to hand back to Fred and hopefully get us started on presenting the strategy to you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And I'm joining from Nairobi. I am a Black African male seated on a chair. I use 2 elbow crutches to walk. And now I am in a shirt that I was struggling to get the color, but I'm going to say it's yellow, black, and blue. So really, if I get one of the colors wrong, I can see Anne, you laughing, but those are the colors actually. So this really is a significant moment, as Anne did mention, for us as AD International. We come from a space where we are looking at how do we transform the ecosystem of grant making. And to be able to do that, we said, how about we come up with a strategic framework that helps explain this in a more detailed way so that whoever is working with us, the public, our stakeholders, and disability justice activists actually can follow through and understand the ways that we've decided to work in support of their work in terms of the effort they are working on within their grassroots. So as was mentioned, we're calling our strategy Mtiririko, which actually just translates to the flow. And the reason why we are drawing towards the concept of flow in terms of how is it that it is possible for us to increase the way resources get to organizations of persons with disability and disability justice activists. How are we able to support those who have the vision, the urgency, and the right to lead, who are actually disability justice activists, in a more powerful way, that they are able to find themselves, organize themselves, and really work on the issues that they care about using the resources that we have through our networks, our positionality as an organization registered in the UK. Hence, if you hear about solidarity, it is exactly what we are trying to do, to be in solidarity of disability justice activists, and running away from the old traditional model of development into in a manner that we are now working with alongside organizations of persons with disability. So what is disability?
I think that Fred maybe has an issue with his network. That's not just for me, right? So I think he was about to explain what disability justice is. I'm going to give him a minute and see if he comes back. And if he doesn't, then I'll explain it to you. Yeah, let's just give him a minute. I think it's probably his network. So, let me see. Okay, so just give me one moment to get the notes and I'll pick it up. So, so disability justice is a concept that's broader than disability rights, but still includes disability rights. And it's the concept in which we're basing our strategic framework. So we want to see resources flow to disability justice activists and their organizations through this flow of resources that we've described in the strategic framework of Mtiririko. Fred, I want to hand back to you from where you were. I had just very briefly begun to start explaining what disability justice was, but I know you have what you wanted to say ready, so please continue.
Thank you so much. And no one warns you that actually it can happen anytime with technology. And so I am back. So looking at what are the various intersections that persons with disability have that usually in the contemporary development, people don't focus on that. And just only looking at us as persons with disability having maybe single life, leading single lives. But for us, we want to go more than that, because we know there's a woman with disability, there's a woman with a young man with a disability, there's someone who has various types of intersecting, they're interacting with various intersecting features that all of those needs to be taken account of. So if I'm young, maybe I'm also looking for a job, maybe I'm also struggling with another health condition, and I'm living maybe in poverty. All that means that if we look at it from a justice perspective, we'll be able to cover that. And that's the reason we choose to go with the term disability justice, as you realize along the way. And also just centering the lived experience of those individuals we seek to support within through our work. As AD, in our new strategy, next please, we want to see a world which has no ableism, where ableism is something of the past, and ableism in a manner that we shouldn't be comparing Fredrick, who has a physical disability, with someone who doesn't have a physical disability. If I'm using a wheelchair is not me. A wheelchair is just part of my life experiences. So if we see that, it means that when we achieve a world where there's no ableism, then we are going nearer to having thriving disability justice movements. Because when we have a thriving disability movement, every single person is able to do their own thing on their own volition without feeling that they're being pushed. And we want to see, how are we then supporting disability justice organization to realize that? How are we nurturing their lived experience? How are we supporting them to build powerful movements that ordinarily any other people are not actually supporting them? And there's less resources that is invested towards supporting disability justice movement. So we want to see that these movements have the resources they need. They are able to organize and influence and challenge us to be able to see issues from their own perspective, not how we think of them. We know that disabled people make 16% of the world population, and they do face an incredible amount of challenges. There's worse discrimination, people not paying attention to their issues, and we see disability justice activists pushing back on this, but they're pushing back on this while not supported, while intersecting with so much challenges within the community. We see that, say, women with disability being actually discriminated within spaces that are supposed to be promoting women rights, for example. We see young people facing barriers of even participating within spaces that are supposed to be inclusive of young people. And we see even persons with disability from the rural areas not being able to be supported within disability rights movement. And all this, it means that there's something that is lacking that then needs to be solved. And we look at it as a response through this strategy that we holistically work on disability justice to support these particular individuals. If you look at it in terms of a broader mantra, it is about access to resources. It's about leadership development opportunities. It's about lack of movement support. That means that disability justice activists actually cannot collaborate or work on their own issues because there's no resources. No one is actually willing to invest in the issues that they identify as priority. No one is paying attention to them, that they need to make decisions and be in control of resources that help them work on issues that actually affect them. Everyone wants to make decisions for these particular individuals. In leadership opportunities, programs that are meant to support leadership development, they're actually discriminated or are very few. So it means that founders within this space can actually not thrive. They cannot work on their initiatives. And we keep on now saying that, organization of persons with disability are weak, while we are actually not providing for an opportunity for them to be supported. So really it's about how then do we provide an environment that protects them, that allows them to work on the changes that they actually need to see. This is why this strategy is actually important for the activists and the ideas, and how then we work on supporting their issues. And we did have a good opportunity to ask the activists, disability justice activists, through consultations, interviews, and our long years partnership with the disability justice activists. And there are things that actually form a pattern that came through. And what they say is they want more decision-making power, because no one cares to ask them what is it that they want, or what are the priorities that they want to focus on in terms of their work. No one gives them resources, or if there are resources, there's being told that you can only use these 2% to afford those who are working on your initiative, but then the rest you need to put them on the project. It means that they are asking for unrestricted funding to be able to innovate within the initiatives that they're working on within their communities. And they're looking at equality of marginalized groups within themselves, because they are those who have invisible disabilities, there are those who have different marginalization that actually want to have the same footing as the rest of the teams. And they also want us to prioritize lived experience leadership. And they are calling on us for us to influence the wider sector so that these things are known, that these things are prioritized by everyone. So really, it's about this that we get our mandate to say disability justice is important as a concept for us to work on. Mary Ann.
Thanks, Fred. So from this scenario that Fred's laid out of the reason why our strategy is called Mtiririko, it's about flowing resources to disability justice activists and organisations, we get our 5 new strategic priorities for AD that are designed to cover big strategic goals for the next 10 years. So this is the long-term strategy that we're laying out and a new direction that AD is moving in. And to summarize it, we say that our drive is really to challenge and change the status quo. And so in these strategic areas, you'll see how we plan to do this. And you'll see some sense of what we think success might look like in these over the next 10 years. So over a medium term, I would say. Alongside these, we will be developing rolling implementation plans that support the implementation of this strategy and that look out for a shorter period of time, for a couple of years at a time, and that we keep updating as we learn and develop this new approach to our work. I was about to say change the slide, and then I realized I was doing the slide, so bear with me. So our first strategic area is resource activism. So we're saying we will resource disability justice activism through participatory grant making. So this is the first way in which we will seek to become a channel through which resources can flow abundantly to disability justice organisations, and we'll be doing this through participatory grant-making approaches in Africa and Asia, the regions where AD has worked for the last almost 40 years. And to do this, we will be piloting, testing and iterating to allow disability justice activists to design grant-making that meets their needs and that is accessible and inclusive. And within that, and I think you'll understand why based on what Fred's already shared, we want our grants to be as flexible as possible, We are aiming to provide as longer term support as possible. And we're prioritising funding groups that are the most underfunded and face double discrimination in a variety of ways. Fred's already highlighted young people and girls and women with disabilities for whom we already have funds that we're piloting and testing at the moment. And we'll continue in that vein to prioritise funds in groups that are underfunded within the disability space. And grants will be accompanied by accompaniment support, mentorship and coaching in response to the needs that activists and organisations identify themselves. So that's our first area of support. This year, this is where we're piloting. So we're piloting an African Women's Fund that will fund organisations in Tanzania, women-led disability justice organisations in Tanzania, Uganda and Ghana. An emergency response fund, we began that last year and we're continuing it in Sudan. There's a collaborative fund that we're developing in Cambodia and a mental health fund in Bangladesh. So those are our pilots, and it's important just to note that we're piloting PGM, therefore, in every country where we've been working recently. So Uganda, Tanzania, Sudan, Cambodia and Bangladesh, and also in Ghana, where AD hasn't worked for a few years. And we want to be clear, our goal is to distribute 25 million, and you'll see this when you see the strategy document. Our goal is to distribute £25 million of funding over the next 10 years. But AD doesn't currently have all of this funding. In fact, we currently only have a small amount of it available, and all of that is committed to the pilots that we're running this year and to our work over the next few years. But what we're hoping is that with the launch of this strategy, we'll be able to build more partnerships with funders who want to help us make this vision a reality. So we just wanted to be really clear about that. Our goal is to be this channel for funding to flow, and we're not able to flow funding everywhere that we would want to flow it yet. I'll hand back to Fred for our, oh no, I won't. I've got one more, sorry. So our second strategic priority is to nourish movement. So Fred also spoke about this. We believe that coming together to disrupt patterns of injustice really matters. And we want to nourish and sustain connection and collaboration and support movements to thrive. And so we'll do this by funding connections and collaboration alongside the grant making, and helping people to hold space and build collective solidarity and strength. And we'll also facilitate cross-movement learning and collaboration with other human rights movements to try and break down some of the current silos that exist. So we're really thinking about how we help to increase the connectiveness in disability movements and help them to thrive in this one. And now I'm going to hand back to Fred for our third.
Thank you. And we look to nurture leaders. By nurturing leaders, we mean that we want to invest in disability justice leadership through a leadership academy that will work on supporting persons with disability who are either activists, disability justice activists, want to lead organization or just lead campaigns that are actually centering their lives, centering their lived experiences. And since we realize that within the other spaces, we've not had an opportunity for persons with disability to be developed into leaders, or a proper way through which they are supported to lead within the initiative towards successes that then champion their issues quite well with other movements. So we are proposing a leadership academy that then helps them find space to collaborate, but also work with other movements. And this will be a cohort-based program, which takes on like cohorts of 25 people per year in different sectors of life, and then supporting them to go through a curriculum that empowers them to work on issues that they choose in terms of advocacy, aspiration, what is it that they want to do for their communities and their peers. If it is their organization, what are the issues? Does someone want to work on employment issues and advocacy issues? Is it education? Is it health? So that we're not siloing them into one way of showing up as leaders. And we also want to influence change. This means that we will partner with other stakeholders and collaborate so that we can increase the flow of resources to disability justice activists. We realize that as an organization, it's not possible to have all the resources to resource these organizations, these activists who have actually been missing out. And using our privilege and positionality as a UK registered organization, becoming now a funder, how best can we inspire and influence working with other human rights organizations, funders, foundations, to really improve their own efforts towards supporting disability justice movements. We want to see what is the space of, say, women with disability within the women rights, the feminist movement. Can we talk to the feminist movement and see that they are also allocating resources to women with disability within those spaces? Be it a youth movement, are they also allocating resources to support disability activists who are working on youth issues and any other grouping that come out that work with persons with disability? So really, it's about how we're supporting and creating a learning journey for others who are already in the field, working on different issues. It might be climate justice, it might be social justice, but collaborating with them so that we infuse disability justice angle and working alongside in partnership so that we create a more bigger, slow, mightier flow of resources to organizational disability justice activists. Mary Ann.
Thanks, Fred. And our final strategic objective, which I won't talk too much about today, but is to transform AD. So we want to model the change we want to see in the world within our own organisation and to make these changes with integrity. So we've transitioned our structure already away from one of a traditional INGO with a UK-based head office and country offices to what we've called our global footprint structure, where any role that does not need to be geographically specific for an administrative reason can be located anywhere in we work, including our directors and our co-CEOs. And this is part of a journey towards becoming a leaner organisation that doesn't cost as much to run as well, and is able to therefore enable more resources to flow to disability justice activists. In doing so, in the process of responsibly exiting from previous programme commitments and gathering insights from what we've learned over the past 40 years to inform this new work. And also we're committed to an anti-ableist and anti-racist culture that centres care, safety, trust and well-being. And we're also reinstating our commitment to 50% of our board and all of our staff being people with disabilities within the next 5 years. So our board's already achieved that, but on our staff team, we still have a way to go. We don't underestimate the work that all of this will take. And so there is also a commitment to invest in the internal policy, practice, training and development needed to build the organisation will need to be in the next 10 years. And more of this is going to be in the strategy when you get to read it. I have a few more slides. I'm going to do them very briefly because I know we want to get to the Q&A, Sabina. So I just want to say that in doing this, we're going back to our roots to some extent, because AD was founded as a supporter to disability movements in the countries in Africa and Asia where we started to work in the 1980s. And so in this strategy, we really are going back to AD's roots and building on those to create a new way of working for the future. How we think change happens. So just to say very briefly, We believe that when we invest in movements, activists can strengthen their agency, power, and collaborative action to drive change and create a more inclusive world for all. And when you read the strategy, you'll see that we talk a bit about how we know that change is doesn't always happen in a linear way, and that we learn from movements that it ebbs and flows and iterates and emerges over time. And so we want to be responsive to that, and we'll be building our framework for understanding and learning and developing this strategy as we go on that basis. So we won't necessarily have a traditional monitoring and evaluation and learning tools, but rather an activist-centered approach to measuring change. And again, we'll share more about that in the full strategy document. The philosophy that sits behind all of this are really these 4 pillars. So lived experience leadership, intersectionality, justice, learning, trust, and care. I think you've heard quite a bit about those already, so I'm not going to dwell on them here, but again, there's going to be more about them in the strategic document that we're launching today, and that you'll get the link for in the chat. And our location, I've already spoken to it, but just to really emphasize that we're not going to localize our offices or compete with Indigenous disability justice organisations in the countries where we operate. But instead, we're going to work in a leaner way. We'll work with advisors in countries that are new to AD, and we'll use our position as an organisation that is registered in the UK with intention, because we know that that gives us access to some resources and some networks that may not be accessible to many of our partners. And so we talk a lot more in the strategic document about that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to hurry because I want us to get to the conversation with our guests. So, but what this does, and what the way we're going to work over the next 10 years does, and again, more in the document, enables us to reduce some costs and pass more resources on to activists through our participatory grant making. I want to just thank everyone who contributed to this strategy. Again, there are many, many names that are listed in the strategy. I'm not going to try to do them justice here now in the presentation, but thank you to everyone who's been a part of the consultations, the process of development, the writing, the amazing illustrations. All of those people are named in the strategy, and when you get it, you'll be able to see them. Savina, welcome.
Thank you so much, Fred and Mary Ann. As you can tell, we have a lot that we want to say about this new strategy, and we only really had time for a brief overview today, but you'll be able to read more when we share the link to our strategic framework document. And I'm sure that you have lots of questions about what Fred and Mary Ann have just shared. So please do use the Q&A function to ask your questions now. We will have an opportunity to answer some of those questions during this event. So, hello everybody. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Sabina. I'm the Director of Funding, Communications and Transformative Partnerships at AD International. I'm a British Punjabi woman with brown skin, black hair, sort of black and white glasses, and also a black and white shirt. Lots in black and white today. And now I'm delighted to welcome a couple of guests onto this virtual stage, and we'll be spending the next half an hour or so having a conversation about some of the themes and the key issues that you've heard Fred and Mary Ann talk about, and which are central to Mtiririko, AD's new strategy. So let's go ahead and welcome our guests and give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. And I think I'm going to start by handing over to you, Vireak. Feel free to say hello and introduce yourself.
Okay, thanks, Sabina. Hello, my name is Vireak. I am a person with visual impairment, and I am white skin and black hair. And today I am delighted to join launch strategy of at international organization. Thanks. So I hand to Jenny.
Thanks, Vireak. Go ahead, Zenny. We can hear you, but you're breaking a little bit.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zenna Akwa. I am a Black woman, disability justice activist from Tanzania. I'm wearing a blue dress with hijab. I'm working with clashes, and I'm happy and I feel honored to be here. I believe this is a learning program, and I really enjoy.
Thank you, Zenny. Callum?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Callum Aitken. I'm a British white man with black hair, and I'm wearing a checked shirt today. I work for People's Postcode Lottery as the International Development Advisor. People's Postcode Lottery is a subscription-based lottery which has been operating in Great Britain since 2005. 33% of the money raised from each ticket goes towards charities and good causes. And I'm delighted to say that we have just started a new long-term funding partnership with AD International this year. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's great to have all three of you here for this conversation. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the key themes in Mtiririko. And Vireak, I'm going to come to you first with the first question, because as we heard from Fred, one of the strategic priorities in our new strategy is to launch a global disability leadership academy. Now, you are somebody who has been through a leadership program with AD Cambodia in the past. So I'm curious to hear, what do you think about this idea?
Yes, thanks, Sabina, for your question. I am Vireak, and I am a person who has received leadership academy training from ADD International Cambodia in the past. And it was my credibility for me who has been chosen to be a young leader at here. And it was my good opportunity as a young with disability. And on behalf of a former young leader, I think leadership academy training is one of the most knowledgeable leadership that I had never had in the previous time, because I think it is a leadership that provides a lot of knowledge enhancement and empowerment. For instance, when I was here, young leader has been given a chance to participate some important activity works of ADD International Cambodia, including soft skill empowerment. We have studied research relevant to disability law and policy. In the previous time, we studied a lot about UNCRPD, and when we were here, we learned a lot about disability movement. And then I can admit that leadership academy training is not just theory, it is a practical training as well. For example, in the previous time, young leader could be one of the most important role to organize in some training, as we have co-facilitate gender equality and disability inclusion to GVB service provider at provincial level. We conduct training, we conduct soft skill training to OPD overall from our country, overall country. And more importantly, young leaders were playing one of the most important role to collect data and doing data analysis with research consultant. And it is, I can say that it is one of the most important thing for young with disability in, I can say that mostly, not mostly, overall in Cambodia and all over the world to learn that training.
Thank you, Vireak.
And one more, I think leadership academy training is a visionary leadership that I have learned. As I mentioned early, I have a lot of experience to co-facilitate and conduct training. I think my vision is I have to take what I have learned from ADD to build disability sector to be much better in the future. And
thank you so much, Vireak. I think we're gonna come back to you in a minute because I want to hear a bit more about what you've gone on to do with that leadership training. But I'm going to move on to the next question now. But thank you for highlighting what you did as part of your leadership training at AD. It's great to hear that, you know, it was both theoretical but practical. The learning was very much centered on practical usage as well, which is really important to us. So we're going to stay on the theme of leadership, and I'm going to come to you, Zenna. So we want to hear a bit more about your story. So you're a chef and you employ other people with disabilities at your restaurant. You've said to me in the past, which I hope you don't mind me sharing, you cook for the stomach and you cook for the soul, which I think is beautiful. Can you tell us a bit more about your personal leadership journey and how has what you're doing with your restaurant in your community really shifted and impacted people's views about disability?
Being a chef, to me, it's a blessing. Blessing to me, I believe it's a blessing to the whole world. And I would like to share a short story about myself. I'm a chef by professional, and I'm a woman with disability. Before starting the Parachef Tanzania, it's our restaurant, people used to criticize my ability, used to reject me. And of course, you know, in a place where I live, if you're a person with disability, it's not easy for a big hotel to hire you. So I used their negativity to motivate myself. And in 2022, I got the opportunity to cook for youth. It was on August, about 100 youth. And when I was serving the food, two ladies came to me. First one asked me this question: how do you cook? How do you cope with this environment? In this area, you are the only one person with disability. And the second person asked me this question, very tricky one. She said, don't you think that you don't belong here? What if you fall? She never thought, what if I fly? She only sees the negativity. Then as a chef and a leader, and of course I am a disability activist, I understand that this person needs to learn how to interact with people like me. And it's my duty to educate them. So for the first question, I told her, I love cooking. And when people eating my food, to me, it's something I can't even explain my joy. And for the second question, I told her, first, this is who I am. I cannot be ashamed of who I am. I love what I'm doing. And I even tell her this. it's me who have disability, my food not. And I asked her, when you eat my food, did you see any disabled thing on your plate? And she was like, no. Then I had to tell her, disability, it's a matter of perception. When you choose to view a disabled person, just the way he or she is, you learn and understand more how to interact with us. This story has been motivating me always on making impacts on disability things. First thing, my people with disability and our restaurant, we have this aim. We say, welcome to Parachef, where there is a home for your heart. And when a customer comes, we give them food for their stomach and we give them food for their soul. So we are able to change perception of people with disability, but we are proof that anyone can work with a person with disability. And believe me, people with disabilities, we are always ready. We know that we need to try to do things harder to compare with people who doesn't have disability. But we are always ready and we do everything in a time. Second thing, they were able to learn success doesn't exclude anyone. Through me, I was able to be recognized with different NGOs. I was being interviewed with a lot of media. I was able to reach out more than 100 of people to teach them through my social media, through my YouTube channel. And we were able to make any disabled to feel that she or he belong in this society. As a chef, there is a recipe for a soul. In this life, where there is disabled person or where there is Chef Zen, there is magic.
Thank you so much, Chef Zenny, for sharing that inspiring story and reminding us that, yeah, success doesn't exclude anyone. And really, we should focus on how people with disabilities can fly rather than just focusing on how they may fall. Thank you, Zenny. That's lovely. Callum, I'm going to come to you for the next question, and we're going to shift from the strategic priority around nurturing leaders to the first strategic priority in our new strategy, which is all about resourcing activism. So as we heard from Fred and Mary Ann, Mtiririko is very clear in its commitment to give long-term, unrestricted funding to disability justice activists and their organisations, people like Vireak, people like Zenny, to go on and pursue their dreams. And this is something that we know the People's Postcode Lottery has been doing for a really long time, ever since your inception. And we're delighted to be in a partnership with you in which we can flow more unrestricted funding to the activists that are leading the work. Can you tell us a bit more about why you believe unrestricted funding is so vital, and specifically, why do you think it's going to be vital for disability justice activists and movements in Africa and Asia?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Sabina. So as you alluded to, at People's Postcode Lottery, we've given out over £1 billion in unrestricted funding since 2005, and we've supported hundreds of different charities in that time. So it really is part of our DNA as a funder. I think in a nutshell, we believe unrestricted funding is important because it shows our charity partners that we trust them. And trust is key really to the success of all our partnerships and our ability to provide unrestricted funding. Now, don't get me wrong, it takes time to build trust, but once you have it, we find that there's loads of advantages to working in this way and giving unrestricted funding. The first one is that we have a lot more of an open and honest relationship with our charities, because unrestricted funding brings us closer to the heart of an organisation and what they truly want to achieve, rather than projects and which are always a lot more surface layer. Related to that, our funding, we believe, is more effective and more impactful because there's flexibility and agility built in. So when the parameters of a charity partner's work change, which they will all the time, charities have space to adapt quickly without any hurdles. And there's a lot less bureaucracy and burdensome reporting as well. And that frees up charities to focus on delivering change. And lastly, and I think this is important with regards to the disability justice movements, which AD seeks to work alongside, providing unrestricted funding is our way of saying that charities are the experts and that they know how best to use funding to meet their aims as an organisation. And I think this is really crucial when it comes to working with local organisations, locally led disability justice movements, because it recognises that these people know and understand the context in which they're operating in, and that they're best placed to know how to tackle the problems that they see in their communities.
Thank you so much, Callum. Zenny, I'm going to come back to you on this theme. So Callum's just talked about a couple of important issues like trusting the leadership of people who are closest to the issues to know how to solve them. This is something that you've got experience of as well, because last year you were part of our first participatory grant making pilot in Tanzania. Your role was to be part of the panel of people who were deciding who should receive funding. So usually we know that apart from the People's Postcode Lottery, the people who are deciding how funding is given out usually restrict it. And usually they're people who don't have lived experience of the issue, or they might not even be from the country where the work is going to take place. So can you explain to us why you think it's so important that people with disabilities themselves are making decisions about where funding goes and how it's spent?
Well, first of all, it was a life-changing program. I really love it and I'm enjoying being one of the judges. I think it's important to be on the front line of making those decisions realistically. We are in a better position to decide where the fund goes, because we are the one who knows what we want and what we doesn't want for that moment. And giving us the power to decide what project to implement. It's a better thing to do because we are able to do what exactly needed at the area for the right time, and it gives us the chance to address the actual problem that person with disabilities face. But making funding decision on our behalf without us, as we know, nothing for us without us. To me, it sounds like you are adding another disability to us. So being in the front line, to me, is the best thing to do, and it's a life-changing for people with disabilities to get these chances. Let's look back when I was among of the judges. When we were selecting a winner, first, I feel included. I feel honored. I feel like we own this. It's me, Zenna, sitting and selecting a winner. And when I listened to one of our winner on the radio ever, I felt very proud of it. Seeing my winner is changing perception through her songs. And she's going viral right now on the YouTube channels and other social networks. So to me, it is the best thing to do. Nothing for us without us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Zenny. And you can hear more about Ava that Zenny mentioned and her story on AD's website if you're interested to learn more. Vireak, I'm going to come back to you with another question now. So as we've heard from the presentation earlier, Mtiririko is all about supporting the ideas of people with disabilities, and especially supporting the ideas of young people with disabilities. Now, you have a brilliant idea which you've come up with after your leadership training with AD, and you've established a small group of young people with disabilities in Cambodia who have an idea about improving screen reading technology in Khmer. Can you tell us a bit more about this brilliant idea that you have? And could you tell us what you would do if you had a small amount of funding available for it?
Of course. Thanks, Sabina. As I mentioned earlier, after when I live after I left at international Cambodia, I have to ask myself, what would I do when I live here, and what would I do to take what I have learned from ADD. And then after I spent a few days with myself, I saw one problem that most or all persons with visual impairment in Cambodia are struggling to access is screen technology reader in Khmer, because it is one of the most difficult thing that happen currently. And at that time, I decided to establish one small team or one small group that who are member from persons with disability, and some of them are worker, some of them are a student. And you want to know what is screen reader with screen reader in Khmer. Screen reader in Khmer refer to technology that support persons with disability can access their reading in Khmer. Now in Cambodia, we don't have yet the program relevant to Khmer reader. So that's why our vision, we want to make it happen in Cambodia. And I would love to answer this question. If I have fun, what would I do? To be honestly, our team just made informal team. So we don't have accountability yet. So it is very technical to answer. And then we just complete our dream. We want to have screen technology reader in Khmer, happen to have people with visual impairment in Cambodia. Thanks, Samina.
Thank you, Vireak. I just think that's such an inspiring example of young people coming together and identifying a real problem that is in front of them and is affecting their lives every day, and deciding that they want to come together and do something about it. I mean, you're sharing your personal example, Vireak, but we know that there's many other people and groups of people with disabilities coming together and organizing in the same way. And it's these brilliant, natural, organic, real problems that we want to provide resourcing for in the future. So thank you for sharing. So I'm going to come back to you, Callum, for the next question. So one of the other big focuses of our strategy is to influence other funders and other partners to allocate more of their own funding to disability rights and justice, because this is such an overlooked human rights issue. As we heard earlier, only 3% of human rights funding goes to this particular issue. Can you share a bit about how AD's work with disability justice activists has influenced the way that you and the People's Postcode Lottery think about disability justice funding in the future?
Thanks, Sabina. First of all, we have to hold our hands up at Postcode Lottery and say that disability rights and justice is an underfunded part of our portfolio as well. And so we're delighted to be starting a new long-term partnership with AD International. I think what attracted us to start working with AD is the way that they represent people with disabilities around the world. People with disabilities are often characterized as helpless, as unable to create change without significant support from other people. And I think working with AD introduced us to the idea of the disability justice movement, and that there are hundreds of disability justice activists around the world who want to come up with their own solutions to problems within their community. And obviously using participatory grant making is a great way to do this, as we've already discussed today. So I just want to say a big thank you to ADS, because I think their authenticity and willingness to take us on this journey around what disability justice is has definitely made us more confident as a funder to work in this space. And certainly their use of participatory grant making as well as a way forward to flow resources into these organizations is a really important part of what we want to do going forward as well.
Thank you so much, Callum. That's great to hear. And thank you so much for being so willing to learn and come with us on this journey. Okay, so I think we are coming to the final question already. So we're going to close out this section by asking you all one final question. And that question is, which part of Mtiririko are you personally most excited about? And what role could you play in making Mtiririko a success? So, Vireak, should we come to you first to answer this question? Which part of our strategy are you most excited about, and what role would you like to play in making it a success?
Yes, of course, Sabina. Thank for your question. As a young leader, as a former young leader with disability, I would love to say I am interested in leadership academy training happen to ADD International for another year, and it is very important to give a lot of chance to so many persons with disability increase or express their ability, and it is one of the most important chance that for them to work hard and build disability sector to be much better, and to make sure that to build a visionary outcome to be more interesting and more popular ahead. And for important role, I can say that I still desire to be a young leader that happened to me in the previous time. Thanks, Sabina.
That's great. Thank you for sharing, Vireak, and we're looking forward to carry on working with you and making this screen reader technology a success soon. Zenny, what about you? Which part of Mtiririko excites you the most, and what role would you like to play in making it a success?
I'm most interested on the decision-making power. As a leader, this is the place where I think people with disability, we need to have the power to make our own decision on what we are doing. Since no one asks us what we want, we need to be the front line, we need to be the leader and lead and decide. This is the place where I am very interested and working on it.
We hear that loud and clear, Zenny. You need to be at the front line, we need to lead, we need to decide. Thank you for putting it so beautifully. Callum, over to you. What are you excited about?
Thanks. I think for People's Postcode Lottery, it's been on our agenda for a while and part of our strategy to allocate more funding, not only to disability justice movement, but to local people in general around the world. But we as a funder don't really have the capabilities to do that ourselves. So I'm really excited to be going on this journey with that, I suppose, as part of the strategy, to connect us with the disability justice movement around the world, to connect us with wonderful people like Zenny and Vireak on this call, and also to use some of the learning that we gain from this partnership to demonstrate to other charity partners and INGOs what can be done to allocate more resources in this way. So yeah, that's the part that I'm most excited about.
Wonderful, thanks, Callum. And yes, demonstrating that it can be done is a really important part of this new approach. So thanks for highlighting that. Okay, so I'm going to stop asking questions now, and I'm going to see if there's any questions from our audience, either for the three of you. There might also be a few questions for Fred and Mary Ann, so just bear with me whilst I take a look. Okay, so our first question, I'm going to ask Mary Ann to come in and respond to this question. This is the question from Jess, and the question is, how does partnerships with other INGOs look like in this new strategy? In other words, what can fellow like-minded organisations do to support you to challenge the status quo?
Thanks, Sabina, and thanks, Jess, for this question. So I think obviously with this new strategy, we're shifting our role, and as many like-minded organisations know, we've been working on that for a few years to get to this point. And I think there's a few ways that we can continue to work with existing partners and new partners to deliver this strategy. So one way is obviously through the influencing change objective, where we're looking to influence others, but we can also work with other international NGOs and funders to influence the sector more widely. So we'd be very happy to partner with other organisations on that influencing. And we can obviously also support with our learning as we develop all these participatory funds that we're already working on, to show you a bit more about how you could also flow resources to disability rights and justice organisations. And finally, you know, there might be opportunities to partner to actually do some of these things. So I think there's influencing together, there's us potentially sharing our learning to help kind of influence you and how you can be part of achieving these objectives too. And we very much see that as part of our role. So we don't necessarily think of AD growing humongous. We actually are thinking that any resources that we can help flow from other parts of the sector to the organisations that we believe should have the power and voice in decision making is a good thing. So those three things really, helping you to flow more resources, working together to influence others. And I said another one and now I've forgotten it, sorry, but I hope I answered the question. I should have written down what I said.
No, that's great, Mary Ann. Thank you. Let's have a look what other questions we have here. So, Fred, I'm going to come to you because there's actually a question about Leadership Academy from Charles. So, with regard to the Leadership Academy, how are you going to ensure that you attract participants, especially from the countryside? Many times, young people with disabilities who join these kind of initiatives all emanate from the capital and urban settings. Yet young people with disabilities, especially in the countryside or in rural places, equally need these skills.
Thanks, Charles. So we've thought through, and we are still actually continuing to think through what will be our funnel in terms of how we get activists coming through the academy. But one way will be working with all the partners within different countries. So those who already have projects there, those who already have initiatives, might be funders, might be development organizations, might be organization of persons with disability, it might be other movements, really sharing out what our call is and what we are offering as a Leadership Academy, so that we are able to go into the depth of reaching the marginalized groups. You will remember on our strategy, we center marginalized groups as our priority. So it goes to speak that we are going to invest more in reaching those who are not the usual suspects, those whose development is not designed to reach them. And this is why we are saying we just want to focus on, say, 25 a year and do a thorough work so that actually they experience the development that we are planning through the Leadership Academy. So rest assured that we are going past the cities. We are going past the elitists within the disability movement. We want to reach those who never get these opportunities. And we'll be reaching out to like yourselves and your organization so that we can actually achieve that particular goal.
Sabina, you're muted.
You don't know when it's going to happen, like Fred said. This was in my control, but it still happened. Anyway, Fred, I was saying, there's a couple of questions that I'm seeing around really specific themes and questions about whether we're going to work on these themes. So, for example, working with people with refugees with disabilities. I'm also seeing a question around whether we're still going to focus on livelihoods. Are we also going to still work on advocacy for disability rights? Fred or Mary Ann, could one of you talk a bit more about how we focus on that?
So, Mary Ann, you want to go?
You start and I can always come in. Go ahead.
So how we've thought about it is that exactly that's what makes development to be difficult at some point, because we choose who we want to work with. And then it means those who need the support that we actually are providing, tend normally not to get it. So our approach at AD is that we are reaching the marginalized within even the disability movement, but we are not going to be prescriptive who is going to get support. So long as someone with a disability and they are an activist, disability justice activist, or they are an organization that is led by disability justice activists. We don't care your intersecting experiences, whether you identify as what, but the fact is we are a facility that is going to dedicate resources to support persons with disability in whichever form that they present themselves, in whatever project, activity, program, initiative they present. We are not going to be prescriptive in terms of what should you work on. That's why we are saying we want to support disability justice activists in an unrestricted way. So we allow you to think, innovate, and tell us, this is what I think can work from my environment. In my ecosystem, this is what will support persons with disability to overcome these particular challenges.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. It's just to say that rather than kind of theming our strategy and saying, well, we only focus on this, we really wanted to give that decision-making power about what are the most important issues as far as possible to the people with disabilities who make decisions about our grant making. And so I think, you know, there's scope within this strategy to work on a whole range of issues, essentially. And we want, as far as possible, to develop mechanisms that allow people with disabilities to be making those choices themselves rather than AD making them. Yeah.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. And there's a couple of questions around how in our strategy we're going to ensure that we're reaching the most oppressed. And so recognizing that, you know, even within a category of people with disabilities, there's some people that experience multiple intersecting forms of oppression. And also we talked about this idea of intersectionality, which is the fact that people have many different aspects to their identity and the oppression they experience is different. Now, can you talk a bit more, Fred and Mary Ann, about how we're going to make sure that we reach the most marginalized in that way?
Maybe I'll start and then hand to you, Fred. So I think the first way that we're going to do that is to make it, we've made it a clear philosophy and a strategic framework. So we want to make sure that we're constantly asking ourselves that question that you're asking us, right? As we develop these pilots, as we develop this new way of working, as we shift what we do. And to be clear, there is quite a big shift in what AD's doing from where we were when Fred and I joined a few years ago to where we're going in this new framework. So the first thing is to be asking ourselves, are we including the most excluded? Are we constantly thinking about who's missing here? So I think the number one is actually asking ourselves that question and then building that into how we develop the grant making pilots, how we support movements, how we develop the Leadership Academy. So I think the first thing is really to put that question front and center. And, you know, we won't always perfectly be able to say that we've achieved that in, you know, perfection, but rather that it becomes part of how we orient ourselves and how we make decisions about what we do, that's a key principle in it. I don't know if you want to add on it, Fred. Anything?
And it's the reason we are saying that we are centering the voices of persons with disabilities, so they are going to be deciding. So it's also going to be a question of how can person with disability tell us who is missing in the room? Because ourselves as staff, we might have a particular bias or not lack of knowledge or some sort of just ignorance amongst ourselves. And it's the reason we are inviting person with disability in the room to help us make the decisions. So it will be them that also we are questioning, but who is left amongst you that isn't represented here, and how are we reaching them? So it's a collaborative decision that we're going to see that no one actually gets left behind, because it's person with disability who know who are their peers, who is out there, and it is them we're also going to be working with to help us make those particular important decisions, and so that we reach everyone.
Thanks, Fred. So we are coming to the end of our time. So I just want to say thank you so much, Callum, for being here. Vireak, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights and your stories. Zenny, it's been so great to have you with us as well. Thank you so much for your time. We're gonna bring Anne back to talk about close us out. But just before we do that, I just wanted to read one comment that we've had from Alex in Uganda, because I think it's a really nice way to end this section. So Alex from Uganda has said, many times our countries, particularly Uganda, launch programs, projects and strategies. Unfortunately, I have never felt the hope on any of those. This strategy is absolutely disability centered and restores hope for the positive transformation of persons with disabilities. I am so pleased to hear that this strategy gives you hope, Alex. I hope it gives hope to many of the other people that are listening into this event as well. It certainly drives us and energizes us. It gives us a lot of a hope too. So we're happy that we were able to share that hope with you. Thanks for the comment, Alex. So I'm going to say goodbye to our panelists, and I'm going to hand over to Anne to close us out for the final few minutes that we have together. Thanks all.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think I'll sort of just quickly give you some of, you know, my takes from this discussion. It's been exciting, especially, you know, the question and the remark that you've just read, Sabina. To me, what I'm hearing is nothing about us without us. And really, it's about disabled people influencing change, having the power to influence that change. Disability justice, to me, builds on the disability rights by recognizing the intersectionality and those lived experience, which is very, very important. And also what I'm hearing is that people with disabilities or disabled people are not their disability. We are not our disability. We are much more than that. And this strategy will enable that to come out, where we will sort of like really bring what we want on the table and how we can influence and be part of the change. So that is very, very important. You know, from Fred, I actually had something that was very interesting. You know, the lived experience of disabled people is central and core to this. You know, Zenna talked about eliminating ableism, you know, and activists would like more decision-making, access to resources, so that they are enabled to bring that in. Vireak talked about the leadership academy training, which empowers and equips both, you know, I mean, theoretically or practically to go and do this. But also listening to Zenna, the perception of disability is something that is very interesting, because to me, I just feel that some of us disabled people have a lot to do in this. We need to challenge perception. And it's how we live, it's how we speak, it's how we do things, it's how we get engaged that will really help us to challenge those misconceptions about disability and also help to bring about change. And I think this really just makes the unrestricted funding more exciting, that you know your community better than the funders. And sometimes when that stream of money is coming, you are able to sit down and say, we want this to go through this channel. And that's hence Mtiririko. This is how we want this to flow. You know, don't cut the river here. Don't put the blocks or the boundaries here. But maybe just to close, I'm going to ask Mary Ann and Fred to give us some of those final questions. Mary Ann, what should people look out for from AD this year?
Thanks, Anne. I think, yeah, look out for us beginning to really move on implementing this new strategy for the participatory grant making pilots and our learning from them, for building connections with us to partner on this new strategy, whether you're a funder or another INGO in this space and you'd like to work with us, we'd love to hear from you. So those are my 3 top things to look at.
Thank you so much, Mary Ann. Fred, what do you think? What should people look out for from AD this year?
Really, it's about Mtiririko, it's the flow. And something can't flow if you're not putting in another water or something like that. So we are looking out for a real huge flow, and we are looking out for partnerships. So we are going to be seeking out partnership with peers and other already established funds, foundation, institutional donors, so that we can work together both as an educator within the space, so that we learn together and we show everyone how disability justice activists have actually been missing out. And if all of us are working on social justice, if all of us are working on human rights, it means that we can't avoid supporting disability justice organizations and activists. So we want to work with everyone. We are open. We want to be supportive and really join up resources to ensure that it flows. It's about the flow.
Thank you, Fred. And then just quickly, because we are running out of time, to both of you, what would you like everyone listening to this webinar to do? You know, it's sort of like, what do you want them to do? What comes after this? Maybe we'll start with you, Mary Ann, and then to Fred.
Fred is about to speak. Please go and read our strategy. It's on the website now. So ads.org.uk/Mtiririko. The link's in the chat right now. Go and have a look, download it, have a look, and please sign up to our newsletter to keep update with what we're up to as we implement this new strategy. You can also find us on social media. So I would love for people to take maybe one follow-up action to go and download the strategy or join our newsletter, just so that we can stay connected with you and keep sharing with you as this new strategy unfolds. Yeah.
For those listening to this, you might be saying, I don't know how I can support AD, but there will be that sharing our strategy with somebody else who wasn't in this particular webinar, sharing with a funder that you know might be interested. It's not a must they fund us tomorrow, but opening that conversation with us and linking them with Sabina will really help us, because that's the start of conversation. It flows when you show it away. So maybe it's you who will have opened a way through which then resources can flow to disability justice activists. It's not about, I'm not working for persons with disability. My project doesn't center persons with disability. If you do anything that works with human beings, then it means you're working with persons with disability as well, because disability justice activists are just human beings. So any project you have, it might be a wash project, it might be water, it might be health. That's where we want organization of persons with disability to draw resources as well from. And the how is when then you link them to Sabina, so that we can slowly talk to them and educate and work in partnership, in supportive, so that together all of us can actually ensure that there's enough resources flowing to disability justice activists, because it is what we need to do as human beings. And thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. That has been so exciting. And I'll just remind you again, the question that I asked when we started. What does disability justice mean to you? I wish I was a fly on the wall, when you go to your places, just to hear that very, very good conversations that will be going on. To everyone who's joined us today, you've given your time, to the panelists, and especially to the two CEOs, but to our funders, all the activists anywhere who are listening to us now, who've joined now, and those who will probably listen to this later. I just want to say a very big thank you. And I'm going to leave you with these words. A hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. So let's keep advocating, let's keep championing, and let's not faint. Thank you so much.